1996. Hello everybody, welcome to Fantasy General. Fantasy General. I first played this game, I think when it came out. I played the demo, but unfortunately I couldn't convince my dad to buy me the game. It wasn't until years later that I actually picked it up and beat it. Fun game, still fun even to this day, and when it came out it had quite a following too. I'm recording this at Fraps at 10 FPS. I couldn't turn Fraps up to any higher than 10 FPS without making the sound stutter.
Air was a world graced with joy and a carefree people.
I like the art in this game.
Beauty flourished with the bounty of fertile fields and generous skies.
Generous skies.
In its innocence, though, Air was ill-prepared for the Shadow Lord, a cancerous evil who spread his cloak of death over the world and ravaged its beauty with the foulest corruption.
But who is the Shadow Lord?
Armies.
Why is he such a jerk? It's never answered.
Swept the continents.
Maybe he was abused as a kid.
Few escaped their bloody spears. Fewer still held out any hope for deliverance. And only one dared to challenge the Shadow Lord's malevolent reign.
We know who that is. So that's the intro. I actually went and got this CD off eBay just so I could show you the intro and have music here. So I hope you're happy. Alright, so Fantasy General. It's based on the Panzer General engine. And I've actually never played Panzer General, so I don't really know how to compare it to Panzer General. But essentially you get an army, and you have different types of units that you can use in that army. And then you conquer a total of 6 continents, and I don't know exactly how many battles there are, but it's got to be like around 100. So this is going to be a pretty long Let's Play. But I will definitely show you probably something you don't know if you ever played this game. Because I'm going to do this on hard, and I'm going to do this on hard without reloading. So I don't think there's a video out there like that. So, and you also get to choose your leader. They each have slightly different characteristics, different advantages. This guy right here, Knight Marshal Callus, he gets to heal all of his units once per battle. It's pretty darn useful, actually, especially if you use that strategically. There are several ways to use that where it really helps out. I love it. It's great, but there's a problem with this guy. On hard level, you run into a real problem with units that lose experience, because if your units suffer kills, the kills are recruited back with no experience, and that can, in like the later stages of the game, it can really just shred the effectiveness of your army, particularly your heavy infantry, which is what I'm going to be using a lot of. So that's a problem. That's one of the reasons why I'm not going to play this guy. Although he's good, you know, hey, he's good, especially if you're playing a reload game. You can use, instead of the mortal heavy infantry, you can just use mech heavy infantry. Because if you play in a reload game, you can reload the shrines to get amulets. Enough amulets to deck out, you know, a huge mech heavy infantry force. But we're not reloading, so we're probably going to get, maybe if we're lucky, we might get 5 amulets throughout the game. I don't know, maybe more than that, who knows. But it's not going to be enough to deck out a full heavy infantry mech force. So, and mechs are basically trash without amulets. So that's the problem. So I'm going to be relegated to using probably mostly heavy spearmen, a mortal unit, which suffer kills and therefore suffer experience loss. And you'll see there's a huge difference if you play this guy and then play the guy I'm going to play. you'll see the huge difference in experience in your troop force because of the other guy, the Warlord Marcus. He gets 1 level of experience for free, and that really helps you keep up your, 5 shield heavy infantry units all throughout the game. Very important. Also, he gets another character that I really like, Malric, who's a unique hero that you get like really early, really way too early in my opinion. This guy's really powerful, and he's basically good for most of the game. Really hate not to get that guy. So I'd love to play this guy. Also, this guy has almost he's 1 short of having the biggest army. The biggest army, this guy right here has the biggest army by just 1 troop. I know a lot of people think that he has a lot bigger army than he does, but it turns out he actually only ends up getting about 1 troop slot more than this guy. And actually, if you wanted to count this guy's unique hero, which is useful, while this guy's unique hero really isn't useful in the later game, then this guy actually has more, or has the same number of troops if you want to count Malric. I think you could theoretically do that. Also, he's charismatic, which means he gets plus 20 morale for all his troops, and that helps for the units not to break so much. I tell you, you really notice low morale when you're playing this guy who gets a morale penalty. You really notice his troops break a lot, which is a really pain in the butt. He's a healer, and I think that means that he gets a 5% chance per continent of converting hits to morale loss, which is a nice bonus. I think that effectively reduces damage to your units by about 5%. I think effectively that's what it means per continent. So it stacks every continent, you get another 5%. That's a big bonus. But unfortunately, like I said, the problem is the experience loss that you're going to suffer with your heavy infantry. And that is such a big issue that I'm actually not going to choose this guy. And just for the hell of it, we'll talk about her too. She just stinks. That's all I can say. Beast units are not very good. The cavalry are okay. Sky Hunters, I'm sorry, they suffer kills, and in the later game, you're just not going to be able to keep them to 5 shields. That's a problem. The heavy infantry, it's good in the medium, early to medium game, but at the late game, the grade 5 beast unit is heavy infantry is really kind of crap. No force march, weak, and compared to other units, it's really just not much to scream about. No specials. So, and she gets the lowest army size, which is a big problem. Yeah, what can I say? Also, when these characters that get to research either beast units or magic units, for the grade or the type of unit that they're researching, if you're researching a mortal unit there, you'll only get half of the research gold going into that mortal unit. And that's a big problem because one of the ways I survive and thrive in the early game is use, or maybe overuse, of heavy infantry. That's one of my key strategies, and one of the strategies that I found works really well on hard no reloads. So she's going to have heavy infantry, mortal heavy infantry that lags behind. So I'm not going to get the force march, which is kind of crucial in some maps in the early game. I'm going to be stuck with heavy infantry beast units, which are not bad in the early stages, like up till grade 3 or 4. Those are pretty good units, but later I'm not going to get like heavy spearmen for a real long time because of her research penalty there. That's a problem. Limited spellcaster, she can cast Heal Beasts or Plague once per turn. Heal Beasts basically heals all beasts in your army, or once per battle, not once per turn. It might be it might be reasonable if it was once per turn, but it's not really that useful, particularly because you don't have a lot of beast units usually. I don't end up with a lot of beast units in the end game. I mean, in the early game, yeah, maybe, but the other problem with beast units, of course, is they don't upgrade, so it's not like you can build a unit up in the very beginning, and with experience, and carry him over to the higher grades. So you got to kind of throw them away once you get a new grade, basically, and that's also a problem. And summons monsters. Summons 2 random magic units per battle. Not really that useful because they tend to come. They don't have any experience, and they're usually very underpowered compared to what you have in your regular army. Usually, you'll have a couple of grades higher than the monsters you summon typically. So they're not really that useful. Plus, they're completely random. You never know. You might get a totally worthless class that'll never do anything anyway. So, no. Not going to use her. Krell. Now, I really thought about trying to do Krell. Krell's fun, and that's basically the reason I was wanting to do him. He's fun, but on a hard game with no reloads, it is very hard to get off the ground with Krell, I can tell you that. First of all, he gets a penalty to morale, minus 20 morale, which you'll notice that the units with Krell tend to break a lot. So you run into that problem. It's a minor nuisance, but it is noticeable. He's a spellcaster. He can cast 1 of 4 spells per turn. Very useful, very nice. He gets magic units, and magic units are basically really powerful on offense and sometimes weak on defense. Like this Treeman here. This guy's got 17 melee and 12 armor. Well, say a mortal unit of that grade will have kind of the reverse, like 15 armor and 12 melee. But this is actually a problem because his defense is so weak. This is a problem surviving on hard, because on a hard what you've got to do is you basically, especially in the early game, you got to kind of keep the enemy from recruiting. So you got to spread your force all around the map and choke off the enemy from recruiting in all the towns, and then you go out and you kill them. So what you really need is kind of heavy defense while you just kind of hold your ground while your units, take control of all the towns. So the high attack, low defense thing is really hard to pull off. Be honest with you, I've played several times with Krell trying to get through. Well, I have gotten through the first battle of the second continent on hard, no reloads with Krell. I have gotten there, but it's like, what after that? And then you got the third continent, which is even harder. So I believe I have gotten to the third continent with him on hard, no reloads, but it's like that's where it kind of falls apart. It's very difficult. Possible, I'm sure, but I haven't really figured out a good strategy for that. He also suffers with the same problem with Sorceress Mordra, where you want the mortal heavy infantry because it has force march and it also has negate cavalry charge. Very key things to have at a certain point in the game, especially starting on the second continent. But you also have magic heavy infantry that you got to research. So the research is actually, it's not split. As I understand it, it's not split. What happens is the mortal research only gets 50% of the gold, and the magic unit gets 100% of the gold. So you get actually 150%. But the problem is the mortal unit lags behind, and that's a real problem if, it's just not, you're just not going to get high enough grade fast enough. Now, if you reloaded shrines, then you could do it. That's the key. If you're reloading, it's a big difference. But if you're not reloading and you're playing on hard, it's really tough to pull off. I'll tell you that right now. So, but why Krell is cool and why people like him is because he's got the best air units. And really, I would only recommend heavy air army with Krell. Really, it isn't worth it on if you only have mechs or beasts or mortal units. I'll go into that later. But it's really fun to play like a heavy to maybe even all air army with Krell and be able to pull it off. And you can do it on hard, by the way. But no, sorry, not Krell's not the guy. This is our man, the Lord Marcus. Warlord Marcus, the Lord Jesus Christ Marcus. He's a light and heavy foot recruiter. He gets a research bonus to heavy infantry and light infantry. He also gets a purchase bonus to heavy infantry and light infantry of about 15%. That's huge because my key strategy for winning on hard with no reloads is to just deck my army out with heavy infantry in the beginning especially. Later I'll get some cavalry, but basically the key force is the heavy infantry early in the game, and boy does that help. Researching them quicker, being able to purchase more of them cheaper, that's really great. He does also eventually get, technically, the biggest army. In, I think it's the 4th continent, he outdoes the next runner-up, which is Knight Marshal Callus, by 1 unit slot. And I know some people think he gets more than that, but he actually doesn't. He only has a bigger army by 1, which is kind of disappointing, to tell you the truth. Famous, he recruits more generic heroes, which really aren't that useful. He recruits more auxiliaries, which actually, once you get to the 4th continent, then that's actually pretty useful, so that's kind of nice. Warlord, I'm not sure what that is. Warlord, whatever. General, he gets +1 experience, 1 shield of experience for each recruit. That is actually the reason I'm playing him. That's the key thing. It's such a huge bonus that essentially almost makes every unit you have a grade higher. Like this swordsman right here, 12 melee and 15 armor. Well, with Warlord Marcus, because I get 1 extra shield, he'll have 14 armor or 14 melee and 17 armor. It's a huge difference in this game, believe me. Also, that helps with experience loss because he'll recruit back dead units or dead guys with that 1 shield of experience, and that'll help to mitigate the huge experience drain you tend to get in the later game when you're taking lots of kills. So you'll be able to keep like your core units at at least 4 shields. They won't drop all the way down to like 2, like sometimes happens. It's a real problem when that happens. You'll see. I'll go through my army as I go through the first 3 continents, and you'll see my heavy infantry, just slowly build up to like 5 shields and pretty much stay there. That's key, and remember, it's not so much about the end game, because in the end game, I think any of these 4 guys are pretty much playable if you can survive to that point. Really, it's the early game on hard, no reloads, that's the tough part. And this guy has an extremely strong early game. So this is the guy.
The time of waiting is over. No longer shall we bend beneath
I like the art in
oppression
this
of
game.
the Shadow.
Kind of nice.
The Council of Five places all its trust and hope.
Anyway, this is the
in
first
you
continent,
carry
and I've got to
forth
kill this guy. And this guy's like a mirror image of me.
is to
He's
recapture
like,
one of the 5 continents of air.
I think he's like basically got the same kind of
Those
stats as I
suffer
do.
The Shadow Lord.
He doesn't cast any spells.
The continent of Kildonia.
I think he maybe recruits at 1 shield of experience or something like
Shall
that.
it more
For each continent you go through, you fight a different general, and they all have their, like the next continent that we go to is really annoying because this guy casts a spell every turn, and oh my god, that'll tear up your sky units, if you have any. It's really annoying. Anyway, another cool thing about Warlord Marcus, he's probably the guy that starts with the most useful item, or the best item. Boots of Rapid Movement right there. Those are extremely nice. They increase movement by 1. And, so you start with an Elf Bowman, huh? Well, right off the bat, let's talk about the different classes of units. Now they have all these different classes here, Looks like 10 total. And basically, all of these guys are here just to fool you into thinking that you need something other than this. Heavy infantry. Because I guarantee you don't, not if you play this guy. Not if you play Warlord Marcus and you know what you're doing. Now, I will later get cavalry, because they're a nice complement, especially because when they're grade 5, they're pretty buff, because they get raised dead. So I will get some other units at some point, but mostly in the beginning, I'm just going to have an army of heavy infantry. And the main reason that is, well, let me go through the other units here. You got light infantry. These guys are just weak heavy infantry with 4 movement, and they move in open formation. So the problem is that later heavy infantry, but first of all, they're just too weak to really do any damage to anything. Later, heavy infantry gets force march, which means that heavy infantry is actually faster than these guys in most cases. So that kind of negates that bonus. They get better stats in terrain, but it's not enough to really... I mean, a heavy infantry in terrain will still kick their ass, because the heavy infantry just has better stats no matter what. So that little bonus they get is it's just not enough to make them really useful. Now, they're cheap, and, you know, I would say, so what? Big deal. They're not cheap enough, I'll tell you that. And it doesn't matter how cheap they are. I mean, they need to actually be useful, and they're just not useful. Now, we have some in our army already, but we'll probably just let them die and replace them as needed here. Skirmishers are a little better. They're 4 movement also. They have the ability to attack melee units without retaliation. It's kind of nice. They also have a 50% chance of converting hits to morale loss. I think it's hits and not wounds. Hits to morale loss. And that essentially means they take half damage from any unit that's their movement speed or slower. Now that's a big bonus. And versus melee units have kind of a tough time with these guys sometimes. Not that hard really, because they don't hit that hard is the thing. That's probably the biggest downside, is they don't have a lot of armor and they don't hit that hard. So really, one-on-one, a heavy infantry unit will probably kick their butt. But of course, they're really cheap, and they're always pretty cheap. They're probably one of the cheapest. I think they are the cheapest unit, except for light infantry. So, but personally, I would rather deck my army out with heavy infantry. Heavy infantry, one of the key things is their melee ability, and they can basically push units around. That'll come in handy in a lot of maps where you don't want to kill units, you just want to kind of push them out of the way for a while. And skirmishers can't do that. Now, skirmishers also get the ability to turn invisible at some point. Useful, but it doesn't seem as if I've ever had a unit that could actually sneak around to somewhere and make real use of that. It seems like I've tried very hard to like make a unit that could stealthily like sneak up and take a city, but it just for some reason never seems to work. It seems like there's always a unit in the way somewhere that you just can't sneak around. I don't know. But it is nice for like hiding the unit when it's near death or something like that. But all said and done, these guys just aren't strong enough. They're weak to cavalry charges in particular, because cavalry are faster than they are, and they don't get that half damage to save their life. So, yeah, they're just too weak, and they get slaughtered by too many things. Really, you don't need them. You're better off with some heavy infantry. Archers. Now, archers are a very nice idea, and I will actually use some archers in the early game. But the biggest problem is right here. Movement of only 3. And at the later grades, they don't move in open formation even. So, open formation lets you move over like forest and rough terrain at 1 tile without a penalty, basically. And in the later grades, they don't move in open formation, they move at closed formation, so that means that they're going to be slow, and they're never going to get to where they need to get to in time to really be effective at anything. Now, there is an exception there. You get or you might get a unique hero at some point that moves at 4 and open formation and is an archer. And hopefully we get that guy, and he is very useful. But just regular archers, you're better off with a heavy infantry that's faster, that can, you know... I mean, I'm not saying archers don't have a use. There are a few uses for them. I'll use them in a few maps, but not really. You know, there's just such a limited use because of their slow speed is the problem. If they were faster, it'd be different. Now, obviously, I have the boots of mobility here. I could give this archer boots of mobility, but there's a problem with that. The computer just loves to target these guys. So you'll be sitting there with an archer, and if the computer can see the archer, you know, it'll send a bombardier after him, or it'll hit him with a spell, or it'll send a sky hunter after them, and just, you know, maul your unit, and probably, you know, because they're so weak on defense, you know, it'll probably shred them pretty good, so they'll, like, have a few deaths, and that'll knock their experience down, and, you know, it's just, they basically need cloaks of hiding, so you can't really give them boots of mobility, because you got to give them a cloak of hiding so they don't get wailed on. So that's the problem. So they're always going to be just too slow. And in this game, you see, theoretically, if they had designed the maps right, which they did some good map design, but if they had designed the maps with the units in mind, then you could maybe make a nice varied army with, you know, all these different units, each, you know, performing a role that, you know, helps everybody out, and, you know, you'd have a few skirmishers, a few archers, a few cavalry, a few light cavalry, you know, and you could make this, you know, nice little force of diverse units. But problem is, if you do that, you'll be moving so slow that you'll lose most of the later maps, and maybe some of the earlier ones, because the maps are so big and the turns you get to complete them are so small. So basically what I found out through the long time of playing this game is that you basically just need fast, strong units, and that means heavy infantry and cavalry, and that's it. You don't actually need any other units. So that's one of the reasons why these guys are no-go, because of the slow movement speed. Other than that, if they had like 4 movement and open formation, they'd be in. I'd have quite a few of them. Because they get useful things like return fire. They're great for defense. There's a lot of times where that's very useful, but, you know, sorry, just too slow. Oh, cavalry, yeah. Cavalry get a +8 attack and +4 armor when they're charging. That basically means when they're attacking in open terrain. Only on attack. It's not on defense. So they're a little bit weaker than heavy infantry because of that. But when they're charging, they're actually stronger. So it's actually very useful, because the grade 5 mortal cavalry have a magic attack, which is much stronger than a normal attack in most cases, and obviously they get the charge bonus. They move at 5 speed, and they have Raise Dead, which is an amazing spell, maybe an overpowered spell even, which basically raises all their kills, all their wounds. It restores them to full health, basically, no matter what. Also even restores their morale. So, and their resistant to spells, for whatever that's worth. Absolutely awesome units. So I'm probably going to have a mix of half and half. Probably half cavalry, half heavy infantry by the end of the game. So absolutely cool. So I will be researching these guys. And I definitely recommend them. You don't really need them. Really, all you need is heavy infantry, but they're really nice to have. And they really complement your force well. So we will be getting these guys. Light cavalry, sorry, just too weak. They don't even have a magic skirmish attack at grade 5 like skirmishers. So they're nice. They will be using probably one just for the Eagle Eye spell. Actually, I might not even do that. I might just give Sky Hunter, what's that, Amulet of Searching thing that gives +2 search. I might just do that. I might not even use these guys. In fact, I probably won't use these guys at all. But that's about it. They're good as scouts. They get the half damage rule, which means that any unit that attacks them that is their movement or slower will only do about half damage usually, and that kind of keeps them alive a little bit, but really not enough for my taste. They're just too weak in all areas. They're weak in armor. They're weak in their attack ability. You know, it's like a unit that has some scant uses on some maps, but really for the most part is just kind of, you know, it loses all real usefulness at the later stages. So I'm not really too enthusiastic about those guys. Sky Hunters. Now, well, these guys actually are kind of useless unless you have magic units, in which case Sky Hunters are very cool, especially at grade 5, if they're magic units. If they're not magic units, I say they're worthless. I know there's a fact running around that says these guys are absolutely essential, that you need Sky Hunters and you should get like 25% of your forces Sky Hunters. BS. I've won the game without any Sky Hunters at all, on hard. The reason why these guys are not as useful as they should be, their melee and armor values are weak, number one, and they don't have a missile attack, so they've got to go toe-to-toe. If they're attacking like a heavy infantry, you know, they're going to get mauled because the heavy infantry is just stronger, and they're going to suffer damage, and because they don't have a missile attack, you know, they can't just, you know, shoot them from afar and then, you know, not be injured. They got to go toe-to-toe and get totally destroyed in some cases. So these guys cannot really, by themselves they aren't really an effective fighting force unless you're playing Krell and you have Phoenix Hawks, in which case they have Raise Dead, so you can just pretty much attack everything, and you know, you can just raise back your losses, and you won't lose any experience or anything like that, and that's the exception. If you're going to play an all Sky Hunter army with Krell, which I have done on hard, it wasn't a no reload game though, by the way. I did reload shrines, so but if you're going to do that, then you probably want some of these guys, Bombardiers, because Krell gets cloud ships, which are absolutely devastating Bombardiers, and Bombardiers normally, I would say, don't even bother with them. They just don't hit hard enough unless you have the grade 5 mortal unit. You can give like a bow, and they'll be pretty strong. Not strong enough in my opinion, because they're also weak to, like, you know, enemy spells and enemy Sky Hunters, and siege units also will tear them to shreds. So it'll be hard to keep them to, you know, 5 shields. Now you could use the mech versions, the steam castles, but those guys will just get shredded if there's like enemy Sky Hunters. All enemy Sky Hunters in this game, or almost all that you'll face, have a magic attack, so any mech units will have to have an amulet to survive, or you'll have to take complete control of the skies, which means you're going to have a lot of Sky Hunters. So you're going to have to, just to have a few Bombardiers, you're going to have probably an equal number of Sky Hunters to keep them from getting killed. That's another problem. It's not like, you know, it's not like these are a one-for-one unit. Like, one unit is essentially equal to the enemy's, you know, one of the enemy's units. You have to have basically both, in my opinion. Sky Hunters won't do enough damage to ground units. You're going to need some Bombardiers, and the Bombardiers have to be protected by Sky Hunters. So essentially, to do the same amount of damage as one, like, heavy infantry, you have to have a Sky Hunter and a Bombardier. You have to have 2 units. for the price of you know, the same effectiveness as essentially one unit. Also, they can't take shrines, they can't take victory hexes. So basically, Sky Hunters, if you're not playing Krell, don't bother with them. You know, I might get a couple just to like ferry around things like Wands of Healing, or maybe, you know, Wands of Wind Wands, Wind Staffs that'll do damage to other Sky Hunters. But other than that, I probably won't have more than one or two by the end of the game. And that's fine, you don't need any more than that. Siege engines, they're a nice idea, but they just move a little too slow. I do like wall blasters, I really like wall blasters, but the way I play this game on the hard level, they just don't keep up fast enough. Now, I might buy one in the end, for special occasions. There are a few maps where they come in handy, but for the most part, I probably won't buy any of these, especially not the Mortal Troops. Mortal Troops are useless, they suffer kills. Basically, in this game, you want units that don't suffer kills if you can get them, because that means they won't be losing lots of experience in the end game when they're going to get hit a lot. So, and keeping, you know, there's a very big difference between like a 3 shield unit and a 5 shield unit. That's 4 strength and 4 defense, and that makes a huge difference when, you know, in terms of effectiveness. So you want to keep units max in terms of experience, and the units that suffer kills, they tend to be hard to keep at max experience in the late game. So if you're going to get them, definitely get the mech units. Spellcasters, well, kind of useless because they're so slow. Again, some of their spells are kind of neat, but you know, just they only have 10 life. They'll get shredded if they come into contact with anything, you know, other than like a skirmisher. They have no withdrawal chance or anything else keeping them alive, and they only have 10 life. They suffer kills. They only have 3 movement. No. Sorry, you're better off using a heavy infantry or a cavalry unit. So that's it. So based on that, here is going to be my research. I don't think we'll even get Juns. Sometimes I go 15% in light cavalry until Juns. That way I can get a guy with Eagle Eye. I'm not even going to bother. So now this is in the beginning. Basically, the idea: heavy infantry, heavy cavalry. I won't buy cavalry until I get Phoenix Knights, probably. So it's basically just heavy infantry. But we're going to definitely research from the very beginning. And the rest of this stuff, you know, eventually we'll get the rest of this stuff all up there, probably by the 4th continent. But right now, we just want to leave a bunch of gold so I can recruit Max. And let's go ahead and do that. Now this first map here, you'd probably be hard-pressed to actually lose on this one. It's just to get you introduced to the game, basically. Oh yeah, as Warlord Marcus, you start with 2 free heroes, none of which are very useful. I got a corporal here. This is a really weak guy. Sergeant. I mean, they're useful in the beginning, but they definitely get outdated quick. I can tell you that. Even by the 2nd continent, they'll pretty much be outdated. Those are generic heroes, and we'll probably get a few more of those from shrines and stuff. Oh yeah, I'm going to turn off the animations here because, like, when you get Force March and you're casting that thing all the time, it becomes really ridiculous. You want to take control of the city hexes really quick here. Even on this map, that can be annoying, and you can actually lose on this map if you don't make sure you have this blocked off so he can't recruit. He'll recruit in at about 2 shields. think I might have the... I think I might have the cycles. I'm using DOSBox right now. I think I might have the cycles up too high. Because I'm scrolling a little bit too quickly. I think I might have screwed with the cycles. Oopsie, it should be on like 60,000 so it doesn't scroll so fast. Yeah, it's too quick. Way too quick. Must have taken it off 60,000. Yeah, get some cavalry. Thing I don't like about Marcus is he gets no spell or anything. It's kind of boring. Should do it. Alright, I'm going to turn the cycles down here because I can't stand that over quick scrolling. Okay, well it turns out it actually was on 60,000, but it still seemed too fast, so I turned it down to 50,000. Okay, yeah. Next map, pretty straightforward. This is the first map that you can really lose if you don't want to know what you're doing here. But we know what we're doing, so we don't have to worry about that. Let's put this guy up there. Where's my cavalry? Okay. Now it says Warlord Marcus starts with the biggest army. That's actually not true. He starts with actually the smallest, one of the smallest armies. He just gets an extra army slot per continent up until the 4th continent. So, okay, so here's an effective use of our archer right here. We're going to basically some nasty units up here. I want to kind of block them a little while I sneak in the back door over here. That's kind of the idea. This is pretty much how you play this map. So if they want to attack me, they're going to have to suffer return fire from my archer over here. Yeah, I'm just going to put these guys up here. Not going to move too much here. See. So. Oh yeah, probably need to introduce the no kills strategy, which I don't think I really explained that much yet. But basically, the idea is what separates hard from normal and every other difficulty is the amount of gold they get and the amount of shields or experience they get when they recruit. Not when they have normal units on the field, but when they recruit. And they can only really recruit when they don't have the maximum number of units that are allowed per map on the field. So that means if you kill a couple of units, they can recruit a couple units. But at the beginning, if you don't kill any units, then they can't recruit any. Although I've seen them recruit units even when I didn't kill anything, but I think they might have some leeway in the kind of the beginning of the map in some cases. But on this map, if I don't kill any units, you can't recruit any units. So basically, you just kind of defend and kind of bounce around the units a little bit, maybe weaken them a little bit while you stop his ability to recruit, which means block off a hex around a town or a tower that he owns. So I want to probably block off this hex, and you probably need to do it with more than one unit because he'll tend to have a melee unit in here and he'll bounce you off the hex and then recruit in. So that's what I'm doing. I'm basically, while I'm kind of delaying him over here, I'm sneaking up here so I can block off this town and keep him from recruiting. Now what happens when he does recruit at this level is he'll recruit immediately. His recruits will be 2 shields worth of experience, which makes them 4 stronger on both attack and defense, which is actually quite huge. And he gets 200% more gold to do that, so he can recruit not only stronger units, but a lot of stronger units. And if you've hit the specialization penalty, which means you don't have a balanced army and your research is lopsided like mine is, then he might even recruit at 4 shields or 5 shields in some cases. And let me tell you, that really hurts, especially early where you have a small, inexperienced army. So we definitely want to keep him from recruiting. You know, it's okay if you manage to kill 1 or 2, but you don't want to do too many more than that. So now this is the strategy I use in the beginning of the game because you pretty much have to on hard, no reloads. But later I'll be able to just do whatever I want because my army will be big enough and strong enough that it won't really matter what he recruits. So, but that's not till fairly later, like the 4th continent. Actually, maybe late on the 3rd continent. I don't like how this guy blocked me off right there. It's really not very helpful. Now notice I didn't attack him. I'm waiting for this guy to get over here so I have 3 guys next to him and I get a 4 strength bonus. I'm going to just... I don't know. If I attack him, there's a chance I might kill him, so I'm not going to do that. Defend these guys like that. Okay. So notice we're just kind of taking little chunks off here or there, and primarily the thing is that I'm going to delay him. Now, like I said, this guy may not look that strong, but he gets a +8 charge bonus, so that melee is really 16, and that armor is really 13 when I charge on the open field right here, which kind of allows him to really do some damage to this guy. And even though he's going to heal next turn, it kind of pushes him out of the way, and he's going to have to spend his turn healing instead of bothering me, which will allow me to get to that city. So, we got it. We got it. And this guy should do some damage here. Kablamo. I'll push him off there. Oh, also I did 1 kill there, so that, you know, he'll never be able to heal that kill back. So that permanently weakens him if you do a kill. Oh, wow. Nice. Crossbow. I would have probably rather had some gold at this point, but a crossbow isn't bad. It's very useful. The best bow you can get, and bows are very useful, let me tell you that. I'm going to wipe this guy out here. Now, you probably want to do most of your damage with your guys you're going to keep, which are these guys. These volunteers here, they leave me at the end of the continent, so I just kind of use them as, you know, bait in some cases. I don't worry too much whether they die or not. Corporal's going to get obsoleted too. I don't mind killing him off. He's not going to be useful and too much longer. And you don't really want to attack a guy when you're standing on a river. That gives you only get half of your attacks, and that's a problem. Yeah, I'm just going to go over there and just keep that guy from healing. Slingers tried to get me. Ah, defensive fire. Ooh. I'm going to try to get this bowman a little bit of experience. Although he's probably going to be completely left behind after I hit about the last, well, maybe the last half of the 2nd continent. Oh, phooey. Wanted some gold. I got a sergeant. As Warlord Marcus, you have a chance of either getting 40 to 80 gold or a sergeant from that shrine, and I got a sergeant. That's I don't really need any more sergeants. I got tons of sergeants. Rather have some gold. It's much more useful. You know, there's something to be said for a missile attack of 8 added to your melee attack at this stage in the game. So at this stage in the game, a magic attack of 8 is pretty considerable, actually. So this guy should do some actually major damage. Although I wouldn't keep this with him, because the last thing I want to see happen is this guy die with that. You know, I just realized I always forget about this. Okay. Sometimes this goblin sneaks up here and takes this city because I'm not paying attention. I hope that's not... but I think he's down there. I think that's the one. Okay. Yeah, looks like that's the only guy down there. I hate it when that happens. Like I always kick myself when I do that. But it didn't happen this time. Wow. I love the war cries. It's awesome. I'm gonna hit this guy in the open right there, get my charge bonus. Charge it. Charge it bonus. You won't be getting that town. Just because I'm a little paranoid, I'm going to put that guy in that city. Now, I'm sure one of these times I'll screw up and he'll get to recruit back, and then you'll see the true terror of playing on hard on this game. It doesn't look too hard now, but just wait till I screw up and somebody gets to recruit like 5 shield guys around the city. Oh my god. What a nightmare that is. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that. I'd rather get experience for this guy. Yeah, okay, fine. I'm not going to goof around here. Sometimes, some people goof around a little on the maps while they get experience for their guys, but I'm not going to put you through that. You don't need to do it, actually. Okay, I'm actually going to get a couple of light cavalry, because in the next map I'm going to use a few of those guys. And it's not that you need to do it, but it makes the next map quite a bit more useful. I don't know about giving this guy a magical crossbow. That could be a... See, I'm afraid on the next map, or not on the next map, but then on the next continent, the guy you're facing casts a spell every turn, and he really likes to target archers. He likes to target basically anything that has a very low armor rating, and archers have a very low armor rating. And if I give this guy the crossbow, he could, you know, die with it, and I really want to save that crossbow. It's a nice item to save. So I don't think we're going to give that to anybody, because I'm too afraid of dying with it. Corporal. Corporal, sergeant. I put the slow-moving guys over there for the most part. Well, a few of them anyway. Oh yeah, this guy. Okay, cavalry up here. Light cavalry. I think I'll put the light cavalry right there. Light cavalry right there. Corporal. Swordsman. Oh, you know what? I remember. I always used to do that. There we go. That way I can kind of have this guy to defend up here like that. There we go. That sets a little wall over here that these guys got to not only cross a river and attack me, but also have to deal with this archer over here. Next turn. Okay, now we're going to kind of sneak in the back door over here. Right in the back door. This guy has foolishly decided to get in my way. Oh, well. This guy should be able to push him out. Maybe not. There we go, finally. Alright, well, that was actually a mistake. I shouldn't have pushed him all over there. Now he'll heal back to full health. Oh well. At least it gets him a little farther over there. Yeah, took a little defensive fire. Okay, I should be getting my unique guy over here. Yep, there he is, right there. Boric. Not really that useful. A little more useful than the worst guy, which has the Berserk spell. Well, yeah, you could say that armor spell is somewhat useful, at least in the beginning, but the problem is he's just too slow. Movement of 3, that's not going to get him anywhere. And in the late game, it's going to be really too dangerous to drag him along. He's just going to get killed. I usually leave him behind to man some towns or something like that. That's the best I can do. So everybody, each of the leaders gets a unique unit, and this is probably the third or the second least useful. So I'm not really impressed with this guy at all. Let's see here. Let's see if we can we push these guys out of the way? Not really. What's the best thing to do here? Let's see. Well, there we go. Got that guy out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and kill that guy. I'm tired of that guy being in the way like that. Let's see if I can... So he's going to get to recruit one. He's going to get to recruit one guy, but that's okay. It's not going to kill me. Go ahead. Magical armor. Hey, not bad. Again, I would have rather had the gold, I think. Looks like I'm not going to make pikemen by the next continent. I've certainly seen worse rolls on the shrines, that's for sure. Making pikemen by the second continent is actually not too easy unless you're reloading. Oh, I just killed a guy. This guy's completely, well, I wouldn't say completely useless, but certainly not much to scream about. He cost me 4 gold and really wasn't doing me much good. Okay, now I can't recruit out of either of those cities. You'll probably get this guy to level 2 by the next continent. Which is not saying much because he'll probably get picked on anyway and he'll get knocked down to level 1 again. Yuck, yuck, yuck. I'm going to use this corporal pretty liberally because I'm not really worried about him dying. He won't really be useful for too much longer anyway. Just kind of use him like a paper plate. Oh, damn. I got carried away and I killed that guy. That's bad. Yeah, he just recruited another 2 guys in there. Silly me. Shouldn't have killed so many guys, but it's not going to matter anyway. We got it. I should be able to get over here, right? Okay, yeah, there's a recruit. 2 shields. Okay, well, first thing we have to do is remove this guy. You know what? I think I got it. I doubt if he can push me off there, so I'll go ahead and go for it. Trying to figure, I want one more guy around here, but I'm not sure. Worried about him pushing me off here and recruiting. Got to get rid of this guy if I'm going to do it. I know what I can do. Nope, I was wrong. No, well, hopefully he doesn't push me off these hexes. Good. He didn't even come close. Oh, you always want to take the towns because that's an extra 5 gold that it'll give you. I don't think we need to worry anymore. Okay, well, I got everything I need to get. Now I just gotta kill this guy and take the city. And I can win through surrender. Okay. So now we can goof off a little. Let's see here. Any last experience to be had? This guy doesn't matter. A little bit right there, and that's it. And that's it. That's it for the continent. Easy continent, like an introductory continent, basically.
Word of your triumph over King Draga has spread quickly. People are rejoicing for the first time.
Now this guy is a pain in the butt.
From the depths of the sea.
And this is why you don't really want to buy any Sky Hunters, is because of that guy. So, we're not even close to pikemen. We'll probably, I don't know, we may not even get it after this battle. Okay, we got the Amulet of Resistance, which is a nice thing to have. And if you had a Sky Hunter like Malric, you'd be giving it to him. But unfortunately, we don't have Malric. I'm going to give this guy the Boots of Speed, so because he's probably the strongest guy I have, and that'll get him to the front lines quicker. And he's going to pick on my bowman really hard, so I'm not going to... What I'm going to do, I think I'm going to buy a Sky Hunter. I'll show you what I mean when you shouldn't buy any Sky Hunters on this, well, really, maybe the whole continent. This whole continent, you should probably not buy any Sky Hunters. You can do it, I've done it, but, I mean, they get shredded because he casts Whirlwind on them all the time. So, let's see here. We have 2... Okay, that's probably all we need. Everybody else, I think, heavy cavalry, or heavy swordsmen. Heavy infantry.